I live on the edge of the Rocky Mountains, near a forgotten wetland that I decided to explore. Upon closer inspection, I noticed that a drama was happening here. There was even something going on that couldn't be explained. So I decided to film it for a whole year, to bring you the amazing tale of this wetland and the animals that live here. The final days of winter. This seems like just an abandoned quarry, but left unbothered, nature has begun to reclaim it as part of herself. Much of the life here originates underwater, but most of us can only ponder what lives beneath the surface. So let's take a look underwater. The ice has just melted. Besides a tangle of plants and algae, there doesn't seem to be much life down here. But it's still early spring, before the sun's rays have clouded the water with plankton, and weeks away from the breeding frenzy of the amphibians. In the coming months, this view will change drastically. However, there is an intriguing creature in this water now that's been lurking beneath the ice, patiently waiting for spring to arrive. But to find it, I must return at night. In this deep pool, they're not rare, or even hard to find. But capturing good footage of one with camera gear pushing through the water is difficult. Here's one. Almost. Here's another. It looks like it'll take a few tries before I'm successful. By late March, it's still early to find reptiles out, but an unseasonably warm day rouses one out for a bask. The painted turtle. Usually inhabitants of ponds and lakes, painted turtles here could be remnants of when this quarry was an intact wetland, or a few of this nomadic species could have migrated here. But for painted turtles, there's an advantage to living in a wetland like this. The endless sunny banks of loose soil make excellent nesting sites. Time for another dive. Immediately after submersion, there, swimming in open water, is the animal that I'm trying to film. Incredibly, this time it seems to be tolerating my camera. This little water monster is the tiger salamander. This one is in its larval form, and these deep pools are full of them. It's on a hunting excursion, and it actually seems to be using my lights to catch prey. They don't bite down on prey, but rapidly opening their mouth causes a suction that vacuums it up. The 3 fingers projecting from its head are gills, and they're lined with bushy filaments that harvest oxygen from the water. Tiger salamander larvae also have lungs, which they use to control buoyancy in the water. After many nights observing and filming them, I noticed something bizarre and biologically puzzling about these tiger salamanders that sets them apart from others. The progression of spring animates the biological rhythms of the organisms that live here. By early April, green shoots of cattails emerge from the mud and slowly replace the yellow remnants of winter. As the days lengthen and become warmer, the sound of life emanates from all around the wetland. Amphibians have emerged from their muddy winter retreats and begin to chorus. This is the Woodhouse's toad. He's searching for the perfect spot along the edge of this pool from which to call. One where he'll be able to outdo the call of other males, and a spot where females are likely to want to lay their eggs. He heads to water and begins calling the moment he emerges from hibernation. Females are attracted to males with the deepest calls because it means they're more fit. However, tonight there's a small problem with that. Being cold-blooded, amphibians need warm temperatures to achieve vigorous activity. It's only 45 degrees Fahrenheit, and in this chill, males can only muster a pathetic call. There will be no females called in tonight. Along the Rockies, spring and winter dance for several months together before spring finally takes lead. A quick mid-April snow isn't fatal to the animals that have emerged, just a delay. It soon melts, and the moisture that it brings is welcome. There's one organism in these parts whose emergence marks the true onset of spring. When the pasque flower blooms in the foothills, spring has arrived. This tiger salamander larva is one and the same species as this terrestrial tiger salamander. After hatching and developing underwater, this tiger salamander larva is supposed to metamorphose into this land-dwelling adult. The biologically puzzling thing about tiger salamanders here is that they remain in their larval form and don't leave the water. It's called neoteny, and it could be happening because there are no fish at this wetland. Fish are present in virtually all permanent waters, and they prey on salamanders and their eggs until none are left. To avoid fish, tiger salamanders usually inhabit wetlands that dry up periodically. But there, they must metamorphose before the water is gone. Life underwater can be easier than life on land, though, and to never have to leave it would be ideal. So tiger salamanders would have the option of not having to metamorphose at a wetland that never dried up and was devoid of fish. And that is exactly what we have here. But there could be more to the story. Larvae living in water are somehow able to detect if the land around them has become inhospitable, and in response they can become neotenic, remaining in their aquatic form. Perhaps the quarry being dug up around them triggered this response. However, both of these explanations are called to scrutiny because some tiger salamanders here do metamorphose. This is a newly metamorphosed tiger salamander that hasn't left the water yet. The stimulus that causes only some to metamorphose is a mystery, but it does have advantages. As long as some salamanders are leaving the water and others come here to breed, there's constant gene flow which prevents inbreeding. And with so many larvae concentrated in these pools, perhaps some individuals find it easier to metamorphose and head for land where there's less competition. This one rests beneath a bloom of dancing zooplankton. Metamorphosed adults and neotenic larvae can actually breed with each other. Breeding has been happening over the past few weeks, and eggs are now beginning to hatch. These are newly hatched tiger salamanders. Those destined for land will acquire black and yellow stripes and begin leaving the water as early as summer's end. May, and the wetland becomes increasingly green. But not because of rain. These plants grow directly out of the water. Ironically, gray clouds chug overhead day after day without releasing their payload. Wetlands depend on spring rains, and their absence comes with consequences. By now, the water should be teeming with tadpoles, yet female woodhouses toads won't arrive until after heavy rains. Males have been calling endlessly for over a month now. Calling takes great energy, and the males become thin and restless. They're not fighting, but pouncing on anything that could be a female. Just as tiger salamanders don't breed where there are fish, woodhouses toads lay their eggs in the shallow pools where there are no tiger salamanders. It's becoming uncertain whether females will arrive in what's turning out to be the beginnings of a drought. A pair of osprey nests near the wetland, just back from wintering in South America. A short flight from here, the Cachlaputer River gushes out of the Rockies, full of trout. They make fishing trips up and down the river throughout the day. From April through June, a clicking sound emanates from the wetland that's so loud my ears go numb after each night of filming. It should come from a beast of a frog with mighty lungs, but instead, it's the tiny chorus frog, barely the size of a quarter. During the mating season, chorus frogs congregate by the hundreds, but are so vigilant and well camouflaged that even a persistent herpetologist might not find one. They're the most naturally far-ranging North American frog and persist even above tree line in the Rocky Mountains. By late May, the thunderstorms still haven't come, and neither have the female woodhouses toads. Males have not given up. Lying low in surrounding fields, females carry around a heavy burden of eggs waiting to be laid. But the shallow pools begin to dry up, and the water recedes from their margins. One female, apparently unable to wait any longer, has laid her eggs. They hatch after the water has dwindled and will not make it. Difficult for me to fathom. It seems these will be the only of the woodhouses toad's offspring this season, and it's hard to watch them perish. In the end, human sentiment corrupts nature's logic, as it always does. One day in the first week of June, intense winds push forth an atmosphere thick with humidity. The animals seem to be in a state of anticipation. Something large approaches. Plump with eggs, the female woodhouse's toads finally begin their migration to the wetland tonight. She navigates to the same wetland where she was once a tadpole by sense of smell, where the unique odor of the wetland was imprinted on her as a juvenile. Blind toads can still find their way back to their wetland, but toads with a blocked smell wander aimlessly. In the fields around the wetland, tiger salamanders emerge from mammal burrows. They've spent weeks several feet underground waiting for rain. Many perilously cross roads to get to where they're going, and often the outcome is probably what you imagine. After an evening of hunting, this salamander is headed back into town where he lives. He lives there because it provides something necessary for his survival. Along the way, he takes heed not to cross paths with a hungry garter snake or raccoon. They aren't deterred by the mild but foul-tasting poison that his black and yellow spots warn of. Finally, he's arrived. Shelter with unlimited space that he didn't even have to build himself. Here at the Prairie Dog Town. The female woodhouse's toads have arrived at the wetland. She found the call of this male most attractive, and as soon as she enters the water, he'll embrace her. The female can be twice as large as the male. This very firm hold is called amplexus, and it positions the male to bathe her eggs and sperm as she expels them into the water. He's doing it wrong. Sometimes this bond lasts until sunrise, however long it takes to lay her 10,000 eggs. The next morning, there are dozens of egg strands tangled in the shallow pools, and they'll begin hatching within 4 days. June thunderstorms continue almost daily. The rain replenishes the drying pools and spreads green to wherever the water disperses. The hatchling tiger salamander larvae have grown to almost 2 inches, and ones that don't become neotenic have until September to keep growing. The killdeer, named after its call, seems like a nervous bird, but when given its privacy, is quite content. The woodhouse's toad's eggs begin to hatch. It's more of a transformation really than hatching, and once the jelly surrounding the egg dissolves, the change into free-swimming tadpole takes only 2 days. The shallow pools become filled with tens of thousands of tadpoles. They'll graze on algae for the next month or so until they metamorphose into toadlets. While filming on the edge of a pool, I get too close to the nest of this male red-winged blackbird, and he's not having it. Sometimes, man's modification of the landscape can benefit animals. A large sand pile surrounded by pools mimics a ledge beside a river, and the aptly named bank swallow finds it a perfect place to live. Their burrow may be several feet deep, and it culminates in a nesting chamber. Bank swallow colonies can contain thousands of birds, and they're extremely sociable. They feed throughout the day, but at dusk they depart as one grand flock, taking to the sky to hunt flying insects. By the onset of July, the frantic breeding period of the woodhouse's toads and chorus frogs is over, and a relative calm befalls the wetland. Calm, except for one rascal amorously running amok in the pools below. The bullfrog. During their breeding season, males are ravenous and are willing to try mating with just about anything. This one is attracted to my camera.
Oh, come here, my petite ami.
A clump of algae.
Such soft skin.
My boot. And me.
Mademoiselles, where are you?
The bullfrog is native to the eastern United States, but has been introduced into Colorado and much of the rest of the world, where its adaptability and great size let it easily outcompete local frogs.
You want to go eat some grasshoppers with me later? I think you do.
By this time, the countryside usually begins to yellow, but continued thunderstorms have kept it green. The rain has filled the bottom of the wetland with a thin layer of water. Deep and shallow pools that were once separated are now conjoined. Capitalizing on this opportunity, a leviathan of a tiger salamander larva prowls up into the shallows. He can smell a specific morsel here that's more nourishing than the spiny water bugs he's used to eating. He slides into the perfect spot and waits patiently. Tadpoles. This is why woodhouse's toads avoid breeding in salamander-infested waters. There are so many tadpoles spread so wide that the few salamanders who do engage in this feeding strategy won't make any dent at all. Large 12-inch larvae like this are sometimes cannibals. By mid-July, the rains have stopped abruptly and the daytime temperatures sizzle. The overflown water recedes and the shallow pools begin to dry up. Tadpoles are now toadlets leaving the water. Having been laid so late, it was a rushed metamorphosis, and some didn't make it in time. These are thousands of desiccated tadpoles, and one lone survivor, the size of a pebble. August is a time when flower turns to seed. The summer days reach their hottest, and the landscape becomes brittle. However, at this time, the otherwise drab landscape becomes punctuated by the wild sunflower. The ground of the wetland is now animate with bouncing toadlets, whose ambition it is to become plump before autumn. It looks like this one's achieved that. As with most baby animals, there's a gauntlet of hungry predators the toadlets must avoid. One is the garter snake. There are several species of garter snake at the wetland, and this is the western terrestrial garter snake. At 30 inches, it's not a large snake, so she preys on smaller animals. At the wetland, that means amphibians. The garter snake gorges on toads, salamanders, and chorus frogs, but she gets full easily, and most will evade her. Living up to tree line in the Rocky Mountains and well north into Canada, garter snakes inhabit the coldest climates of any reptile. But reptile eggs depend on the warmth of the surrounding environment to develop and don't work in cold climates. So the garter snake has evolved beyond the egg and gives birth to live young. That way, she's able to chase the sunlight throughout the day and move to warm spots to keep the babies inside her toasty as they develop. The summer sun has been harsh, and by the end of August, there's been no rain since mid-July. The hot, dry days have scorched the shallow pools into crust. The deep pools, however, are still intact and teeming with life. It's not the noticeable animals like toads and salamanders that perpetuate this ecosystem. Without the overlooked life forms, plankton, and insects, many larger animals would have no food from which to live. These tiny animals are zooplankton, and they're the energy converter of the wetland. Plant matter is where the energy of the wetland is stored, and grazing zooplankton consume it to grow. When zooplankton are eaten by bigger animals like salamander larvae, they have passed the energy of plants into the food chain. These are Daphnia, which consume microscopic plants. Sunny days allow their plant food sources to bloom, which cause the Daphnia to multiply into great clouds. From above, a damselfly nymph drifts into this cloud and captures several Daphnia for lunch. Copepods live in every aquatic ecosystem on Earth and form the greatest biomass of any animal. This is an ostracod, also called the sea shrimp. Not really a shrimp, but a tiny bivalved crustacean protected by two halves of a shell like a clam. Ostracods are detritivores, meaning they feed on decomposing matter. And so the zooplankton are eaten by the next echelon on the food chain, which are often predatory insect larvae. The dragonfly nymph uses extendable mouthparts to seize its prey. Here, one hunts ostracods. The apparent fins on the end of this damselfly nymph's abdomen are actually gills. Another hunter, this is an insect you saw in motion earlier, the backswimmer. Some of us who may be repulsed at the sight of these creatures may be delighted by the beautiful things into which they metamorphose. Both aerial hunters, damselflies and dragonflies, can be distinguished because thinner damselflies perch with their wings closed, and dragonflies with wings open. By September, activity at the wetland begins to diminish. Plants die off after their seed has been dropped, and the soundtrack of the wetland falls silent as most birds are en route to warmer climates. After devoting all of their resources to breeding in spring, the woodhouse's toads have had the entire summer to concentrate on becoming fat. Hibernation begins in October. Newly metamorphosed tiger salamanders that haven't become neotenic have just left the water. They're about to embark on an emigration away from the wetland to find mammal burrows in which to overwinter. Not enthused by my visit, this one chooses to take refuge back into the water. In October, some things reveal their truest beauty only as they wither. When plants stop producing green chlorophyll, ever-present golden pigments are now able to show through. The first snow comes in late October. The wetland becomes tranquil as it gently falls into winter's cold cradle. By December, the pools are ice-covered and the ground frozen. Beneath the ice, neotenic tiger salamanders still move about, although to a lesser degree. Underwater, frogs linger in a state of torpor, buried in the mud. And the woodhouse's toads are hidden in crevices and beneath rocks, entrenched in the soil. Until vernal warmth returns again, the wetland and its creatures will rest for 5 months. Our conclusion brings us right back to where we began, winter's end. And in just a few weeks, the amphibians will emerge and begin calling all over again. But whenever amphibians are the topic, it has to be noted that right now they're undergoing a rapid die-off around the world. It's happening so fast that in only the past 3 decades, 130 species of amphibians have gone extinct. Habitat loss, climate change, and pollution are major causes, but perhaps the most urgent is a human-spread amphibian plague called chytrid. I could devote an entire film to what we can all do to help amphibians, but for now, you can help simply by researching amphibian extinction and chytrid.